Hey, how you doing? Good afternoon. My name's Herb Thompson. I'm happy to be here, part of the Vet Summit here with the Recon Network. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. So, why is the homeless guy who's in the woods talking to you, right? It's kind of probably look a little different than some of the other people you've been seeing today and over the course of the event. Well, I'm a retired Green Beret. It doesn't define me. It's just what I am. So when I got out, I decided, hey, let's grow some long hair, and I like being in the woods. So, but seriously, we're gonna have a real talk here today. So, about me, hey, I retired from the Army almost 2 years ago. I was able to accomplish everything I wanted to do in the Army. I wanted to be a drill sergeant, and I wanted to be a Green Beret. So my claim to fame is I am the only person in the history of the Army to be Drill Sergeant of the Year for the Army, and also earn the Green Beret. So I tell you that, and probably the first lesson before I continue talking about myself is my cup of coffee still at the gas station this morning costs $1.99, just like everybody else. Nobody gives a care that I was the only person to ever be Drill Sergeant of the Year and earn the Green Beret. So that's kind of like a first little, precursor to what we're going to talk about is, the reality of transition. So my transition, so I left that behind, and then now I'm a graduate student at Cornell, about to finish up my executive MBA with them, and I'm a management consultant. So that's what I do. But there's a lot of how did I get there, right? The transition. I didn't know I wanted to do that, going back over 2 years ago. And then I had to think about what I was going to do. So, transition, let's be real. The first real thing is what you put into is what you're going to get out of it. If you put in the effort, you do all the work, you do it correctly, you talk with people, you're going to have a good transition. If including people, talk with yourself here. If you don't do that, you may have unsuccessful transition. You may have an unsuccessful life after the military. But really, it comes down to, just like in the military, how well you succeeded was on you. That's how well you do outside the military. It's the same thing, right? So you got to adapt and adjust to that. So kind of my journey when I was looking at, hey, what am I going to do after the military? Well, I didn't know what the heck I wanted to do because I joined at 17 years old. So I was kind of lost when I started planning and, hey, what am I going to do next? But the one thing is, I was like, I don't want to become a statistic. I know we have too many veteran suicides, all that, and not that I've ever thought about that stuff, but I was like, I don't want to get to a point that I'm thinking about that. So I better figure out a plan. And I think that's the number one thing to, you really need is a plan and be able to execute it, and then be able to flex off of that plan as, the reality of the situation, your environment, life changes, then you need to adjust that plan. So really, I kind of started laying it out. I was like, well, what do I know? Because I joined at 17. I was like, well, I'm very good at unconventional warfare. Special Forces Team Sergeant. Jump master, I can help people jump out of planes. And really all that stuff, nobody cares. It doesn't matter. So I started looking, but I was like, hey, I'm very good at operational planning. I know how to plan in the military decision-making process. So I said, hey, what do you know? My process of when I transition out of the military, that's the next mission for me. That, in some cases, is the most important mission for me and for my family. So what am I going to do next? Let's plan it like a mission. So I planned to deploy into the United States. And I started digging into it, and the more I dug into it, I really realized what I didn't know. I know I didn't know a lot, and the more I went, I realized the more I didn't know. So I didn't know what I didn't know, and then I didn't know a lot. And that kind of became a calling for me, is I need to find information. I need to find information so I can make a decision on this mission. And, it comes, so I'm going through this, I'm talking with people, and that's the beauty of LinkedIn. I'm a huge believer in LinkedIn networking. Studies have shown, modern days that, somewhere between 70 and 80% of jobs are found through networking. Well, the number one resource for networking in the world and in the United States is LinkedIn, professional networking site. So I had to sit there and I learned LinkedIn. I didn't expect to become this person on LinkedIn that people talk to, people know, and then, be sitting here talking to you. I just was like, hey, this is how I'm going to get information. Let me talk to people. So I started talking to people, and the more I started talking to people, the more I realized, I need to learn more. Because again, everybody's, when you talk to someone, that's their viewpoint. You need to take it in from a lot of sides, and then see how it affects you. And that's really what I was taking out the whole time was, how does it affect me? That's how it affected them, but it may be slightly different with me, or depend on their industry, and that's not the industry I want to do. So for me, I really start talking to people about different industries. And once I, dug into that, I started ruling out some industries. And as I taught, one of the first industries I ruled out was banking. And I tell this all the time is like, I didn't know banking, right? I know there was a bank, there's some tellers, you have some people that give you the money if you still go into those, the physical establishments. And there's some people in the back office. And I've heard of this thing called Wall Street, and I'd seen it on TV, but it's all kind of, it's up there. It was pie in the sky. It wasn't anything I really understood. So when people talked to me about banking, I started talking to some people in the banking industry, and I was like, oh, wow, banking's not what I want to do. And I came to that pretty quick. Nothing against people in banking, nothing against bankers, just wasn't my cup of tea. Obviously, this setting, this isn't where you would find a banker probably, most time, unless they're in their off days. So I was like, okay, let me rule one out. And that's what I started to do. I started to rule out more things. And then, coming through that, I ruled out different industries, but I started picking up on some common themes when I talked to people. And I did over 2,000 informational interviews. Yes, that's a lot. It's way too many. You don't need to do that many. It's ridiculous. But I will say do one more and then do another, because more information is better for you. Knowledge is power. So the more information you can put in your funnel, bring it into your brain, and use that to make informed decisions, then you're good, right? And there was going to be no way I'd question if I made an informed decision. Doesn't mean I made them all right, and I'm going to talk about that, but it means I made informed decisions. And sometimes I listened to people, sometimes I didn't, and then I made it work out. So I'm talking with people, I'm having these informational interviews, and most of them were with service members. So I started out, hey, other Green Berets, and then like other Army veterans, then other services, and then I started talking. It didn't quite work linear, but then I started talking to people who hadn't served. But it was pretty good because I kept refining how I talked about myself and picking up language. And that's kind of one of the things I would learn when I was in the military to go, and a lot of us do, right? You go overseas and you learn the language, either to fit in with the locals because you have to for work, whatever. We pick up, even if we don't know the full language, we pick up terms that get us through the day. Well, that's the same thing with business in the United States. They speak a different language than the people in the military. And I'm going to hit on that again because that was important. I had to learn the language of business. I couldn't talk Army anymore. I couldn't talk like a Green Beret anymore. I had to talk like somebody who would be sitting next to them in a boardroom or in a warehouse, depending on where I wanted to work. So I started, learning the language, gradual process, picking up here and there, observing others, talking to people, listening, reading stuff on LinkedIn, internet research, and I started picking up the language and refining it. So as I'm doing that, I kind of set my sights on, okay, I want to go this direction. And for me, I decided is I'm going to go and get a full-time MBA from a top-tier school, because people had told me if you're going to do it, go to the best place you can. So I'm going to go to a top 10 school, and I'm going to go there for 2 years. I'll transform myself into this business leader, and then I'm going to go about my life and go into management consulting and do all that. So I put a year of my life into going to the Tuck School of Business up at Dartmouth in New Hampshire, a little tiny town of Hanover. Beautiful, amazing place. So I went up there 3 times in a year. 21-hour drive each way from Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Twice I drove it, once I flew. But I went up there and I networked in with people. I talked with people. I did a great program up there called Tuck Next Step that is just tremendous. People from all branches of service, different ranks. Plus you have Olympic level athletes that are transitioning from their sports mixed in with you. So it's just a great experience. But I did all that. And I said, okay, this is where I am. And I was laser focused. Remember, I said have a plan and then have flexibility. Well, I didn't have the flexibility. I said, this is my plan. In some ways, it was beneficial because it gave me something to focus on. But it also is kind of a lesson I learned as I'm sitting there on the day we're going to find out who got accepted for the first round. And I'm sitting there and I knew by 4 p.m. they're going to call you if you get accepted. And I'm waiting by the phone, of course, all day. Like, I'm ready, And nobody called. And then I get the email a little bit after 4 p.m. saying, hey, you've been added to the wait list. And I was like, hey, I failed, So I'm going to not lie. It was a rough weekend. I might have had a couple stiff drinks that weekend and sulked, and then I talked with some people. And that right there is kind of a microcosm of what happens in this transition. Is a few things. You're going to fall in love with somebody, a job, a position, a school, a whatever it is, organization, and they aren't going to fall in love with you back. So you're sitting there loving them, profusing your love to them, showing them how you love them. You do everything you can on your job application or interviews and in your application for graduate school, whatever it is, and then they don't love you. And I was like, okay, this isn't good, you know? And then I talked to people, right? Some people picked me up, and I had a buddy, he's like, hey, listen here, bonehead. You're an enlisted guy who got his degree online while you were finishing up your time as a Special Forces Team Sergeant. And you're older than the typical candidate, and you made the wait list. That's a victory, congratulations. And I'm like, it's not a victory. That was a failure because I didn't make it. And then he's like, dude, you're not seeing it, man. Like, you just got waitlisted at a top 10 program in the United States from where you came from. And then, so I took back and I was like, okay. And that was the second thing from it was people talk to you. And sometimes they need to kick you in the butt. And sometimes they need to pick you up, right? And they need to get you to think clearly. And that's what he did, and some others did during this process of like, okay, maybe this wasn't a failure. Maybe like even getting waitlisted to say I met the criteria, but we're just not going to accept you now until we look at other candidates. That's a victory considering how far out of the norm I was for their profile. And then, that came down to like a third thing, right? Is how do you rebound, right? Because everybody's going to get punched. They always say like, hey, like I think it was Mike Tyson said, you're in a fight once you get punched, and it matters what you get back up. And I'm paraphrasing here. I can't say it as good as I or Mike, but it's true, right? So a lot of what makes us successful in life in general is everybody overcomes has obstacles. It's whether you overcome them. So from there, I was able to adjust my plan. And that really was the important thing of having the flexibility to adjust my plan and being, okay, let me seize on this small victory to build success and to keep moving forward. And kind of the last thing from that is stay positive, right? Because it is very easy to get negative. It is extremely easy when you're told no. You don't even hear from a company back. Or a school says no, a company says no. You got all this other things going on in your life. Maybe you have some physical stuff going on, you have some mental stuff going on, you got all this, and boom, you get kicked in the teeth and you don't even get the job you thought you were gonna get. So you gotta stay positive, smile, man. Smile, it is contagious, right? People, let's be real, if I'm like, who the heck's hiring this mug? I'm a serial killer, but if I'm smiling, at least happy people see positivity, and it's contagious. So always be smiling, be happy. So I pivoted from there, and I applied to the Cornell program, applied a couple more, and I decided on the Cornell program. So, okay, that checked one of the things that I wanted to do. But along that way, now I got to get a job, right? Because now I'm not going to go to school full time. I'm going to do executive on the weekends and nights. So I applied to a company that my buddies work at. Two of my buddies, they were the first 40 people in the company. Now it's probably up over a couple hundred employees, $1 billion valuation. It's a unicorn, right? It's just a tremendous company in kind of the tech and defense industry. And I go for like a job interview, and it didn't go well. I would say, my buddy hit me back up, said, hey, you probably got about, if I was giving you a grade, about 85 out of 100. And there was some particulars that happened with the guy who was doing the interview, and we didn't gel. And so again, I was pissed. I'm like, hey, I can't get a job or this job at a company that two of my closest friends work at. People I've trusted my life with, and I can't get the job there. What the hell am I gonna do in my life? I can't even make it there. What's next? And so I sat there, I was like, crap. But I realized, hey, let's get out of this negative funk that I was in for about 5 minutes. And I was like, okay, I need to stay positive. I need to focus, because nothing's gonna be done for me. And if you take anything else out of this whole conversation besides like, hey, he's in the woods somewhere, it's that nothing is gonna be done for you. Everything you do is gonna be earned by you. You can get some people to help you along the way, but nobody knows what's best for you but you. Only you know what you want. Only you can figure out what you want to do when you grow up after the military, what you want to do the rest of your life. People can help you. There's a lot of great programs out there. There's nonprofits like Commit Foundation, for example, or the Leadership Transition Institute, or the Honor Foundation. And I could keep going on. Veterati gets you with some mentors. American Corporate Partners gets you a mentor. There's all kinds of organizations out there, but they can't answer for you what you want to do. They can help you get to that, but you're going to have to figure that out. So I'm going through that, and I kept talking to more people as I went. And what I really looked for, and I was looking for at that point, was as many people as I talked to were unhappy in their jobs. They got a job, and let's be real, you got to put food on the table. I knew I had a little bit of risk I could accept because I was going to be retired. I'd probably get some VA disability. So I could, I'm not going to be homeless and no food on the table. So I was fortunate, right? I had earned that privilege or earned those benefits, if you will, from my service in the military. So I was going to be okay in that regard. So it really gave me time to think and talk to more people. And really it was about people were just unhappy. The majority of people I talked to, and I talked with from E5s to 3-star generals and everybody in between. I talked with everyone, and a lot of people were unhappy with their job. The large majority were unhappy with their job. And it was just kind of crazy. And one gentleman who used to command a naval warship, he told me, he was like, hey, all of us have worked for a-hole bosses in the military, just people that were mean, and we're like, we'll suck it up because we want a promotion, we want to be in this unit, we want to be in this organization, whatever. So he's like, but we don't have to do that, but we are so accustomed to that. We're like, if we're going to get the right amount of compensation, we'll go do that, and we'll be miserable because, just because we had to in the military, and not in all cases. I've had great leadership in the military, I had bad leadership, but I think all of us have been around some toxic leaders that we just hated going in and being around, hated going to work to be around them. And why get out into that environment in the civilian world? So that's why I really started looking at fit. And that takes me into kind of some things people don't necessarily think about, right? And we're probably gonna be a little different in this talk, as you can already see, than some of the other talks. And when we're talking about fit, it's, I know it when I see it. There was a Supreme Court justice that's, defined poor. Hey, I know when I see it back, and I think it was the 70s. And that's what it is. I know when I see it, but how do I look for it? If it's hard to describe what I'm looking for. So I really just talk to people in the organization, observe people in the organization, and kind of know what is important to me, and then how can I pick that out in an organization? How does it line up? And I think it leads to some things that they don't talk to you about in TAP classes. They don't talk to you about it in a lot of transition programs. It's go get a job. That's great. You know what? If you want a job, go to McDonald's, sign up online, mcdonalds.com, work at your local McDonald's, either in the drive-thru handing out meals, in the cash register, or back flipping burgers. And I'm not putting down people that work at McDonald's. I just think most of us probably transitioning after the military don't look at McDonald's as a destination point for let's go work out in a fast food chain. So I say that that's a job, right? But it's not going to give you what you need. Is it going to give you the mission, right? Is it the mission you can get behind and you're energized? Because for a lot of us, that's what pushed us into the military, right? Or kept us in the military, was we were doing something bigger than ourselves that we believed in. I mean, let's be real, all of us, whether we want to, we acknowledge it or not. Maybe we could have been naive in some cases, because when I was 17, I wasn't necessarily thinking, oh my God, this is, but we signed a dotted line saying we're willing to put our life on the line for the Constitution of the United States of America and our way of life. So it was something bigger than ourselves. And then you stay partially because of that, probably because of the people around you. And which gets me the other part is, where are you going to find your team, right? Everybody I talk to from the military, not one person is like, I miss that day when we were getting smoked and we were out there doing push-ups, flutter kicks. I miss that time when they made us wait on the benches for 2 hours because that office was closed, but we had to go in there and get our shot. Nobody says that. They miss the people. The people we serve with are what made it special, made them, whether you're sitting in a foxhole, you're sitting on a FOB or a fire base in Afghanistan, Iraq, wherever, It's the people that make you think of those experiences. And they were tough. We made it through them, but it was the people that we bonded with during that made it. So where are we going to find people like that? So how do you find an organization that has that mission that you're behind, that has the people, if you will, that you can bond with? Something I found helpful is, hey, I've bonded with a few other veterans I work with, right? So we kind of have our own kind of like, we understand each other. So we're able to have a conversation. Now, it didn't happen overnight. We had to earn each other's trust. And once that happens, then, it was there. So we talked about, the mission. We talked about the fit. We're going to throw one at you. Identity. What's your identity going to be? As I started this off and I said, hey, I'm a, retired Green Beret. I don't usually do that. I just said it here because I knew like people would be like, huh? That's why the guy kind of looks homeless in the woods. And you might have seen, bearded Green Berets down the road. But what's your identity going to be for whether you serve for 2 years or you serve for 32 years? The military has a way of giving you an identity, and you take that identity on. One big reason is it's a way of life. It is not a job. Being in the military is not a job. It is a way of life. And part of that is you live it, right? It's on the weekends, it's at nights, there's never stop. You're always thinking, and you're eating, sleeping, breathing, being a Marine, being a soldier, being an airman, being a sailor, being in the Coast Guard, and I guess now the Space Force. Like that's you, that's your identity. So where's that identity gonna come from? Because let's be real, you were you before the military, right? The Green Beret doesn't make me. I went through a process of selection and qualification course and then serving that has allowed me to maintain my Green Beret. A drill sergeant hat doesn't make me. The hat doesn't make the man in my case, or doesn't make the woman if that applies to you. What is your identity? Who are you? I'm Herb. That's what I tell people. And when they ask me like, hey, you're Herb, what do you do? And I'm like, hey, normally now I'm like, hey, I'm a management consultant. Oh, by the way, I'm a best-selling, award-winning author of the book, The Transition Mission, Green Beret's Approach to Transition from Service. I'm a retired Green Beret. I was a drill. It depends how long we get in the conversation, but what's your identity going to be? And a lot of people overlook that to think it is not important. A lot of people think it's not important. They don't even think about that. And then they get to that point and they're lost. And I've talked with hundreds, thousands of service members that have said, I'm lost. I'm depressed. And it's not the ones, you'd be like, sometimes you just know some people who are like that. But I mean, I'm talking just the other day, Lieutenant Colonel retired, depressed, been retired, quite a while and hasn't done much since. It's just depressed, finding that funk. It's that identity. They didn't find the new identity. They're still in that old identity. Talked to a mentor before, and we talked about it. He was surprised because it hit him, and he's like, "Hey, I'm a career infantry man. We put on a ruck and we go march into combat and we do things. I don't get depressed." And he was depressed for a long time after retiring, probably at least his first year out. All for the reasons I just spoke about. Where was the mission? Where was the team? Where was his identity? And you got to find that. So the more you tie yourself to the identity from the military, the harder it's going to be to move on. We all should be extremely proud of what we did. To me, it's the most important thing I've ever done in my life. It'll be the most special thing is the service to my country. But I also know that chapter's over and I needed to move on to what's next in life. Because I can't just keep looking behind me and relishing that and then not seeing what's in front of me and not focusing on that. It's not fair to my family. It's not fair to myself. I got more stuff to do. I hope to live a long time and I got more goals. So really, I guess you could sum a lot of that up, by purpose. What is your purpose? How do you find that purpose? What the hell is he talking about purpose? All that may be going through your mind is like, what is your purpose? Let's go ahead and think about that for a moment. I'll pause, get a little drink of coffee, and then we're going to talk about some purpose. Okay, purpose. I'm going to tell you what your purpose is. I don't know. I can't tell you. I know for me, I realized a lot of what I did in the military was I was driven by helping others, whether that was my subordinates, my peers, my superiors, if you will, or whether it's the indige I worked with, or as the trainees when I was a drill sergeant, or there's people that I helped out earlier in my career, whatever. That drove me. I have a passion for helping people. That makes me happy to see others succeed. That's how I get a warm fuzzy. I can't buy that anywhere. I can't just go to the store, get that off the shelf, and then I feel good. I have to go earn that. So for me, that was kind of my purpose, is how do I help people? How do I help people? How can I do that? And that all sounds great, because I think a lot of us are like that. How do we help people? Well, there's a big difference between finding that purpose and then putting food on the table. So how are we going to put food on the table while following our purpose? Perfect world, you find that first thing when you're out of the military. Everything's great. You live a happy, life ever after. White picket fence, whatever you want. Nice condo, lake house on the ocean, beach, whatever. The reality is it's probably not going to happen. So you're going to have to weigh some decisions to find that purpose and to continue to find that purpose. Maybe it won't come from work, or maybe a piece of it comes from work. Maybe a piece of it comes from your family and doing stuff for them now because they were traveling with you maybe in the military. Maybe that purpose can be found in your community by volunteering. I will tell you, one of the best things you can do is go volunteer. Just volunteer some time. That is just pure joy, happiness. You can't buy again. So that may be it. Whether it's, you go teach dance for your daughter, or you go, be a baseball coach for your son, or part of a youth league or a church organization or a community organization that is, helping improve your community, building parks, big brothers, big sisters. We could go on forever. That's maybe a point of it. Maybe it's finding that new goals, right? Setting new goals for yourself, which is what I did, was like, hey, I'm going to improve my education. That's a goal for me. That was part of my purpose. It is part of my purpose, because it's helping me get to where I want, but it was also something to give me a mission to go after, right? So it became part of my purpose. And really, you got to think back, and there's many ways, you can look at a book like Design Your Life, What Color's My Parachute, heck, my book, The Transition Mission, go to these different organizations. I mentioned a couple of them earlier, but only you can talk about your purpose or figure out your purpose, right? But if you don't ever think about it, it's definitely not going to happen. So, how do you find that purpose? Talk to people. And you'll hear me say that over and over and over again, is you have to talk to people and listen and have some trusted people you could talk through, run stuff by. And it's a process. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen after a week and, hey, everything's great. I got my purpose. I found a mission. I found an identity. I got a team I'm with. Life is beautiful. Yeah, I think that's what they call Hollywood, right? That is, the reality of transition is life sucks, right? There is some pitfalls in it. It's not all unicorns and rainbow farts out here. And I think we all know that. But we look at others and we're like, they're successful. And they're successful. And oh my God, they're doing it right. And truthfully is, probably everybody's struggling. Everybody's got their own issues. Everybody has issues they're overcoming and have had to overcome. Different levels, it affects different people different ways. But at the end of the day, it's not just you. But if you don't talk to someone, you don't realize that, wow, everybody else is going through this. I mean, let's be real. 250,000 service members transition out of the military every year, right? You think all of them are perfectly happy? I'm just, I'll be frank. No, let's be real. We have a suicide problem, right? So obviously we're all not perfectly happy. The data shows 76% of people who are high risk for suicide from one organization, 76% of them said their transition out of the military was highly stressful or stressful. I'd say that's 76% that are honest. The other 24% were full of crap. Because it is. Now, how we handle stress, how I may define stress and you define stress different, but it is stressful. You're leaving everything in my case, or you're leaving behind a lot of what and you're moving on to something, there's uncertainty, there's ambiguity, all these changes going on in life. So I would say 100% of us, if we're real, would say that to some extent. So how do you lessen those stresses? And a lot of it's talking to people. You see other people that are going through it. You see some solutions they've solved, they found. You put that into your kit bag, that you're carrying around to like figure out how you're going to do things. And you go, and then you make the best of it. So we're there, we're finding purpose, right? And at the end of the day, like I said, sometimes you just got to put food on the table. So how do you balance that? But if you can set a goal and say, hey, I want to get to here. Let me backwards plan, just like I probably did a lot of times in the military. How do I get to that goal? How do I get to that goal? And yes, I may not be at it today. I'll be honest. The company I'm working with now, is that where I see myself being down the road? No, it's not. Is that where I see myself retiring from, again, like normal civilian retire? No, it's not. It's a part of being on my journey to get to my goals and to get to fulfill my purpose, because it's all not going to just happen overnight, and that's okay. The average right now is about 18 months or so, 18 months for a service member staying in a job, their first job when they leave the military. About every 3 years for non-service members when they're just out in the economy change, non-veterans change jobs about every 3 years or so. It's not our parents' economy. People change jobs. But there's a lot more to life than jobs. Jobs are important. You need a job. You got to make money. Yes, but money's not everything. And then you can stop and think, wait a minute. Do I want to make, a lot of people are focused on the compensation that I need to make this amount because we're like, this is what I need to live, right? Well, money's different in different places. If you're living in, Rayford, North Carolina, 75, 80K may be fine. You live pretty good there, depending on your definition of good, depending on how you set up your finance, fine. Get that same amount of money in San Francisco, Los Angeles, Seattle, New York City, Chicago, Washington, D.C. The money is not the same. That's almost minimum wage in like a place like New York City, right? Where, something the size of a doghouse for an apartment studio apartment could cost you, $2, $3, $4 grand. It's different, right? So if you can look at that, you're looking at your purpose, you're finding all that. It's like, okay, where do I want to live? What kind of, what kind of life do I want to live? And you got to have these talks with yourself. Because the reality is you got to figure a lot of stuff out in the transition. The military, it's not easy. It's difficult, but in some ways it's easy, because if you go, hey, how do I become a better machine gunner? You go to the manual and it tells you to do the X, Y, Z, and you go practice it. If you go, hey, how do I get promoted from 03 to 04? You go talk to mentors, you pull out manuals, you see board guidance, you get promoted. If you want to go from E5 to E6, you study this amount of stuff, you score better, you move up, boom. It's you got to execute and implement, but the how-to is there. It's easy to figure out how to do it. Implementing it is a different story. The problem in the civilian world is that's not given to you. There is no book that says, here, follow this, you'll be successful. It's kind of like parenting for those that have kids. Like, I know when my 2 sons popped out, neither one came with a manual of how do you raise this little alien looking thing covering its line that turns out to be the most beautiful thing ever. How do you raise that up? There's no manual, right? The reality is you figure it out. And sometimes we doubt ourselves of, man, am I being the right here as a parent? Am I doing the right thing? But you figure it out, and hopefully you do it right. You observe others, you read up on it, you talk to others, you maybe go seek some professional assistance to help raise them, whatever it is. We do that because it doesn't come with a manual. The same thing is for when you leave the military. There is no manual how to be a civilian, right? Like, hey, You could be a bicycle mechanic in Tulsa, Oklahoma, be happy as heck. You could be a banker on Wall Street, be happy as heck. You could be a painter in, Austin, Texas, or a singer, whatever. If that's what you want to do, figure out the plans and go do it. But there's going to be no manual that tell you how to do it. So when we're realizing this reality of the transition, we have to realize that there's going to be a lot of bumps in the road, right? But there's a lot of people that want to help. I've talked about, hey, here's how I overcome stuff. Here's how I talk to people. The real thing is there's over 48,000 veteran service organizations in the United States. That's a lot. Some good, some bad, some so-so. Depends what you're trying to do. But for almost everything, if you're trying to do something, there's an organization aligned to help you with that. The problem is they don't know you want to do it, and they don't know who you are, and they don't know you need help. So a lot of it is overcoming that pill to swallow and go, hey, I need help. Doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're smart. And say, hey, I need help to figure this out. How do I figure out how to go from, the service to school? Service to school. Go to the VA. Talk to a bunch of different, organizations can help with that. Hey, I want to go and open a business. How do I do that? There's organizations that help you with that. But until you say, hey, red star cluster or red smoke, let me pop it. Let me set up a signal. Hey, somebody help me. Somebody help me. Will you guys help me? Okay, thank you. People will help, but they don't know unless you tell them. And it's okay to go seek that out. Like, it's a smart thing to do. Transition's tough, right? And I said earlier, 250,000 people about transition out of the military every year. Some successful, some not successful. A big difference in those that are successful is the ones who work at it, keep positive attitude, and keep pushing forward. It's a process. It's never done. You keep going. It's not just over one day and okay, hey, life's successful, it's grand. No, it's a process, right? So we got to think about this. So, we go through all that and then we think, okay, all right, now what am I going to do? And really, one thing I would say that I haven't mentioned yet, but I've hinted at along the way, is self-reflection. Because if you don't know what you want to do, how's anybody else going to help you, right? So it helps to do some self-reflection of what really makes you happy. What's going on in your life? Think things through, and that'll help if you take the time to do that. And I'm not saying, you got to be all hippie-ish, doing all that stuff, but really take the time to think, right? And take the time to think those close to you and talk with them about it. Because if you have a family, they're part of that decision too, right? They're with you. So they're going to, reap the rewards or suffer because of it. So do that. And, that self-reflection, you can also kind of start seeing that hey, sometimes, we just need to talk to people. Well, that's because you're depressed or you're feeling some stuff. Hey, it happens to everyone, right? But if you talk to somebody and get ahead of it, it's fine. Just like if I tear up my knee, right? I got a bum knee and it's hurting. I go see the doc, right? I'll try to tough it out, just being who I am. But eventually, I'm going to go kind of see the doc and see if I'm okay, And if not, try to do some stuff to get better. It's the same thing with, with our brain and how we're thinking. So take the breaks for it. Move forward. Really focus on you. This is all about you now after the transition. And that's the reality is kind of the oh crap moment is whether you succeed or don't succeed is on you. And how well you are able to succeed is how well you're able to navigate this. I'll say one thing, it's how well you're able to adapt, right? It's a new environment. Well, you adapt to that new environment when you join the military. You probably weren't, perfectly ready day one of basic training or however you entered your service. You weren't ready at that point. But you learned, you observed from others, you were taught stuff, you sought mentors, and you adapted. The truth is you need to do the same thing when you leave the military service. Put even more work into it because it's a whole new problem set. And learn from others, adapt to your surroundings to be successful. And we just Maybe think something. We just had Veterans Day, right? It was just last week. We are very fortunate in today's day and age to have a country that really supports the military. You know, you see thank you for your service all the time around places, billboards, TVs, whatever it is, social media. There's could be a misconception there. Thank you for your service means thank you for your service. I'm going to hire you for this job because of your service. And that's just not true. You got to go work for it and fight for it and show your value. Nobody's going to give you something just because you're a veteran. I'll be real. You'll get some stuff on Veterans Day, you know, maybe a free blooming onion, a meal here or there. You'll get a thank you, maybe get, you know, 10% discount at Lowe's or Home Depot, and you get a veterans parking maybe at this place. But nobody's going to give you a job just for that, right? Nobody's going to. So the reality is you got to show your value and speak that new language. Like an example, okay, retired from the Army, right? You come to me as a senior machinist mate and say, hey, I did X, Y, and Z in the Navy. I'm gonna have no clue what you're talking about. It's a whole different service, whole different career. There's stuff people come talk to me about in the Army. I'm like, I didn't know that existed. I don't know about that. Sorry. So you gotta translate your value so the person receiving it understands. If your family can understand what you're talking about, maybe you're on your way. If you can go to the local grocery store and grab 10 people, come on and go, hey, and, you know, figuratively give them a 5-minute pitch on who you are, and they understand what you did in the military and how, then it may work, right? Because that's what you got to do. You're trying to show people, other people, who you are and show your value for the jobs, whether it's, you know, in your community, job, you know, place of prayer, whatever it is, you're doing that. So to communicate your value, you got to translate that. And when you learn that whole language, it's a process. Again, it's not going to happen overnight, but it's very easy to get discouraged. And I'm going to keep hitting on that, and have some battle buddies that pick you up, right? Call a battle buddy and say, hey man, because you'd be surprised the ones that be like, dude, I'm going through the same thing, or I went through the same thing, this will help me out. We're still a team. We don't need to be in uniform to still have that bond with the people we serve with, to still have bonds with other people who serve, to still make friends and have bonds with people who didn't serve. We don't need a uniform. We don't need a patch on our uniform or on our outfit, if you will, for that. We just don't. So please talk to someone. Ask questions. Ask questions, because it's okay if you don't know. But you need to know it, and you need to talk to people and figure out solutions. You need to observe, you need to adapt. And that's the reality of transition. Is it's tough, but it's also very rewarding. I love it. I'm as happy now as when I was in the military. Can I say that every day since I've been out? No. Can I say that I loved every day in the military? No, let's be real. We all know we had some pretty crappy days in the military, right? But overall, I'm just as happy, right? Because I found what makes me happy. I found what's good for me. And that's what I'm doing. And I always say, you be you. Because it worked for this person doesn't mean it works for you. You could take little snippets from it, but you gotta be you. And that's why I always say, own your journey. Because that means owning mistakes along the way, learning along the way, but more importantly, being your journey. Not somebody else's journey. I don't want to be Bill Gates. I don't want to be Mark Cuban. I don't want to be Kanye West. I want to be me and be the best me that I can after the military. And I've laid out plans to do that, and I keep adjusting them. I keep refining them, but I'm headed towards that. And I'm just happy. Whether I'm here in the woods or I'm, you know, in an office, I make myself happy wherever I'm at, because a lot of it's a mindset, right? Shifting my mindset of like, it's a little different. I got to do some awesome stuff in the military. If I'm trying to look for that same exact thing outside of the military, I may fail. It's going to be different. Doesn't mean it's better. Doesn't mean it's worse. It's just going to be different. And that's how I shifted my mindset into thinking how it is. It's going to be different. How I'm not going to have somebody next to me who probably is willing to lay down their life for me so we can get this business deal done. Because it's not that important at the end of the day. But it's fun. I'm into it. We can be teammates. it just doesn't, you know, it's different, but it still can give me the same satisfaction. And a lot of that was shifting my mindset. So I really appreciate you, sitting through this. Please reach out to me. Find me on LinkedIn, Herb Thompson, SF to Biz. Look for the beard. Own your journey. Best of luck. Don't be a stranger.